Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, SPC-205, whatever time you're consuming this little artifact of academic media. I am once again your public speaking instructor, Vic McInnes, coming to you live on videotape from the, again, centrally located campus of Aiken Technical College here in the center of the bustling Graniteville, South Carolina metropolitan area. Remember, Aiken Tech is your #1 choice for higher education in the Aiken County area. Today we're going to be talking about organizing your speech. So last time we went through outlining, we showed you how to put it into the format. So again, remember the primary point of outlining is it allows you to visualize your speech. So today we're going to figure out how to get main point 1, main point 2, main point 3. We're going to go over some organizational models. Actually going to go over about 7 of them. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different models, okay? And they're really quite simple. Are all the lights on in here? All the lights are indeed on in here. Okay, first of all, our first order that we're going to talk about is chronological. And chronological is very simply time sequence, first to last, beginning to end, okay? It works best if you're working through some sort of process or a series of historic events. Okay? It's good when things need to be told in a sequence. Like, for instance, the history of the Revolutionary War. Start, end. It started in 1775. It ended in 1783. It's real straightforward, very simple. Okay? But it also works for a process, like you have to do this first, you have to do this second, you have to do this third. Okay? Or it works best to move through in a specific process. Changing your tire. First thing you need to do is get your tire and your jacket, everything out of the trunk. Then you take your tire iron, or as I say here in South Carolina, tire iron, okay, and you loosen all the lug nuts. Then you do it one after the other after the other. Okay? The thing where you see the most, that I think is the most common that nobody ever thinks about is being in chronological order is recipes. Okay? First thing you do is you get all your ingredients together, the mise en place, as it were, if you watch the cooking channel. And then you get your ingredients together and then you combine them in this order. Then you cook them at this temperature. Okay, and then you let it cool, or whatever the follow-on instructions are. It would be a bad idea for you to tell people to take all their ingredients, put them in the oven, and cook them, and then get them out and mix them. That would not be effective. Okay? So the first is chronological order. The second is the narrative order. Now, a narrative order is where you take the information you want to give and you put it in the terms of a story. You have characters, you have conflict, you have drama. And this goes back to a thing called narrative theory, because humans remember things better if it's told in a story. Okay? That's why, if you read the Bible as not advocating it, just as a artifact of historic literature, okay? Jesus spoke in parables. He told stories. He told things in a narrative order. Okay? And we do that. We do that too. You can remember stuff better if it's, hey, Bob caused a meltdown at the nuclear reactor. Here's what happened to Bob. Okay? There is a seminal military textbook called The Defense of Duffer's Drift, where a British lieutenant in the Boer War made a series of mistakes before he actually successfully defended. And Duffer's Drift would be a ford in a river. And it told all these stories through narrative. Okay? So you have characters, settings, plot. We make up stories, or we have stories to illustrate a point. Okay? The next is topic order. Now, topic order is anything broken down into categories or divisions. Okay, a good example, Aiken Technical College. We have the nursing school, we have general education, we have welding, and you can talk about Aiken Technical College by breaking it down by each of those individual schools. We have, I think I said general education. Okay. You could break Aiken Technical College down by the different certifications and degrees we offer. Anything that facilitates it. You've all probably taken a government course where they topic order they break things down in your U.S. civics or U.S. government course is they break it down by branches of government. Executive, legislative, judicial. Okay? So topic order is anything that breaks down into divisions. We have spatial. And yes, to me, you were all spatial, but this is not that kind of spatial. This is spatial as in how things are juxtaposed next to each other in real space. Okay, so if we wanted to continue our talk about Aiken Technical College, we could start down here at the bottom of the hill and tell everybody what's in the 100 building, the 100, 200 building, move up to the 700, 800 building, move laterally over to the 1000 building where the media center is, the commons. But you see where I'm getting. You would walk people through a virtual tour of the campus. Or you could start at the top of the hill and work your way down. If you're talking about the Mississippi River, you would start at the headwaters up in Minnesota, go through the middle river around St. Louis, and then go to the delta down around New Orleans. North to south, east to west. Okay? Anything like that. We have a causal pattern. Now, a causal pattern delineates a cause and effect relationship. If you do this, then this will happen. Cause and effect. It can also be used as an effect cause. Now, a lot of times, and we're going to be talking about problem solution speeches in great detail, okay? Because you're going to be doing one. And the basic thing about a problem solution is cause and effect is identified in the problem. A lot of times you do effect cause. Now, a lot of people ask, why would you do that? The reason is because if I give you the effect right up front, that gets your attention and gets you invested in my speech. If I give you cause up front, you're going like, okay, who cares? All right? So a lot of times we do it effect cause. For instance, America's math test scores, cause effect. Not being on a year-round school schedule has negatively impacted America's math test scores and causing us to drop around the world in math standards. Okay, that's cause effect. What if I did effect cause? The United States is failing in terms of the rest of the world as it comes to math scores. And the reason is we don't do year-round schooling. Okay, you get the cause up, you get the effect up front, and that gets everybody's attention. Now, the next one, we're going to move over here. Problem solution. Now, a problem solution is very similar to causal pattern. And causal pattern will be your problem. But with the causal patterns, you don't offer solution. With the problem solution speech, you do. Okay? Now, a causal pattern can also have a solution as part of it if you're talking about something that's happened in the past. Okay, but a problem solution is you're advocating for a solution to a problem that has yet to be solved. Okay, then finally is logical reason. Logical reason order. And basically, logical reason order boils down to whatever works. If none of these other chronological, narrative, topic order, spatial, causal problem solution. If none of those work, logical reason is defined as an organization that supports the speech's goals. Okay? And that is, yes, it's an absolute catch-all thing that says whatever else works. If it works, it's a logical order. If you have a good organization and it doesn't fall into one of these other six, well, you could just look at them and say, well, I use the logical reason order. And you will be good to go. Okay? So, chronological, good for time, good for historic events in a time-based order, good for processes where from beginning to end you have to go through a series of specific steps. Narrative, tell a story involving plot, conflict, characters, settings. Because of narrative theory, people remember stories better than they do random facts. Topic order. Something broken down by division, by their natural divisions. Spatial order, how things are located in juxtaposition to each other in real space. Causal pattern, the cause and effect, okay? Or more often used, effect and cause. There's problem solution, which is a lot like causal, but the solution, you're proposing a solution to an existing problem. And then finally, logical reason order, which is whatever works for your specific speech. Okay? Those are the 7. Now we're going to move on to because I've only been at this for like 11 minutes. That's hardly any time at all. We're going to move on to something different. We're going to talk about methods of delivery. Methods of delivery. Now, or methods of presentation. If you're going to give a public speech, you're going to have to do it one of 4 ways. One of 4 ways. Okay? There's no other options. You're going to memorize it. You're going to read it from a manuscript. You're going to deliver it extemporaneously. Or you're going to do it impromptu with very little planning. And we're going to walk through each of those in the next few minutes. We're going to start with one that's probably what, is your biggest fear is impromptu speaking. Now, impromptu speaking is something that is done with little or no notice and probably with no notes. You're probably just going to get up there and stand and start talking. A lot of times an impromptu speech will happen when your boss looks at you in a meeting and say, hey, Bob, you just got back from that safety course. Why don't you tell everybody, take about 5-10 minutes and tell everybody what you learned. And you're going to be sitting there going, oh, okay. All right? It's not, you can't look at the guy and go, you didn't give me any warning, I can't do this. You're going to have to. Okay? So impromptu speaking, but that being said, you don't get to just get up there and go, oh, I don't know, it was all right, it was fine. I just learned a bunch of stuff and it was safety stuff and don't stick your hands in the machines when they're running, I guess. And no, that's not going to get it. You're going to wind up looking like you don't know what you're talking about. Okay? First of all, we've already talked about organization. We talked about it when outlining, and you're going to need an organization. Does it have to be as formal as like with an outline and everything else? No. But organization is important. Okay? Take your time in starting. A lot of times when people are asked to give an impromptu speech, and they get up and they immediately just start talking and they go, and they wind up getting completely flustered and they get totally off track. Whenever anybody throws anything to me and I'm expected to start talking, my first 30 seconds to a minute is stuff that I don't even have to think about. I introduce myself. Hey, and this used to happen to me all the time in my previous career. I'd be sitting at a table with a whole bunch of, generals and, deputy secretaries, cabinet secretaries, and somebody would go, okay, well, why doesn't Vic McInnes explain that? And I'm like, huh? So what I would do is the first thing I'd stand up and I introduce myself. Hi, my name's Vic McInnes. I'm the Chief of Signals Intelligence Requirements within the Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Division here at the Central Command Directorate of Intelligence. That gave me 15 seconds to figure out what I'm going to be talking about. A lot of times if I was still struggling, I'd go, listen, I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. That gave me another 5 to 10 seconds. Okay? Don't just leap into it, because remember, you're still going to be expected to have some sort of a preview. You're still going to have some sort of, talking point. Going to have a statement of purpose. All right, and Mr. Smith has asked me to talk to you guys about. Okay, so your organization is still going to be important. Take your time to set that up. Okay. Conclude with your main points. Because nothing makes you seem less professional than you're going like, and I guess that's it. Conclude with, so I covered 3 things in our conversation today. Now, you're sitting there saying, I will never give an impromptu speech in my entire life, and I will call you a liar. You know when you're going to give an impromptu speech? Ms. Smith, thanks for coming in today. I've looked over your resume, and we've just got a couple of questions. The first question I'd like to ask you is, could you outline your one greatest strength and your one greatest weakness? Okay? If the first words out of your mouth are, I don't know, okay? Boss is going to go, do not hire. But if the first words out of your mouth, if you're taking your time, is you go, again, if you just don't talk for a second, one of my basic truisms of public speaking, pausing and not making a sound doesn't show you don't know what to say. It shows you're confident enough to take time to think. So when your boss or your future potential boss looks at you and says, so what are your greatest, tell us about your background in this career field. Well, thanks for the opportunity for me to talk about giving me the opportunity to talk about my experiences. I think I'd like to break them down probably into 3 areas. First of all, teaching I've done at Defense Department colleges and Defense Department schools, teaching I've done in formal college level environments, and then third, I'm probably going to want to talk about just some informal training I've done for people. So first of all, let me talk to you, and right there, you're already clearly showing that you're in command of the subject. Okay. The other thing you're going to want to do, if you know if you're going into a job interview, when I got this job, I knew I was going to have a panel interview with 5 people. I had my wife practice with me. I had her go online and look up, Google job interview questions. And the night before I came for this interview, she asked me, and I was out of town. She did it over Zoom. She asked me over and over a whole bunch of questions just to get me in that thought process. And just as like doing an SAT practice test. Practice a job interview. Practice impromptu speaking. Okay? Just sort of get your head in the game in advance. It'll help. Okay. So the opposite of impromptu speaking is reading from a manuscript. Reading from a manuscript. Now, reading from a manuscript is really seriously where you have a script sitting in front of you and the speech is written down pretty much word for the way you're going to read it. Okay? You have a script, but it's important to remember conversational style is still important. Conversational style is still very important. Okay, even though I have word for word what I'm going to read, I still need to be, and again, when I'm doing this class in classroom, we do a manuscript reading. I can't do that with you here because you don't have a lectern to practice with. But you still need to, here, let me see if I can move to where you can see the lectern. You're not going to be able to see that lectern. Okay, yeah, but I'm not going to have a lot of room. When you deliver a manuscript reading, you have to keep away from the lectern. You don't rest your hands. If you go back and look at President Trump's second impeachment trial on the Senate, the House of Representatives impeachment managers were all incredibly effective at using a podium. They would stand like this, but they used their hands to gesture. And even though they were reading off a manuscript, you could see them turning the page. They were still looking up and making contact with the audience. Okay? Very effective, using their hands, gesturing, giving emphasis, even though their hands were touching the lectern. The other side, the defense counsel for the president, were either doing this or this the whole time. I mean, this is casual and just shows I really don't care what the outcome is here. All right? This shows I'm just reading and I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just reading the words. Okay? Manuscript readings works if you're less familiar with the material. If precise wording is important. Okay? If you have very strict time limits. Okay? I was at one time helping a general officer prepare for testimony before Congress, and he did not want a manuscript. He just wanted to talk for his opening statement. And he made a comment, and I said, "Hey, sir, you want to hold up there for a second? You need to take some notes," which he did not like. Generals don't like being told things like that. I said, "Hey, sir, you're going to want to hold up right there." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, what you just said," and I repeated the sentence back to him. And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "You probably just talked about violating 3 or 4 federal laws. We can't do that." "Really?" I said, "Yeah, sir, you're outside your level of expertise here. This is not how to, you're not. This is not a ranger operation. This is not going in and attacking a fixed position. This is a lot of nuances for operational and intelligence operations, and there's a lot of legal issues here. We really need to get you a manuscript so you can read that and stick to it." A huge percentage of the speeches I gave when I was employed by the Department of Defense were manuscript readings. Because when you were briefing the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, your bosses do not want you just winging it. They want to know exactly what words you're going to say in advance. Okay? Now, the impression most people have with a manuscript, and certainly this is what President Trump always gave the impression of, was that the words were just going by and he'd never seen them before. And reports were that he never pre-read his speeches. and he would screw words up, and he would get lost, and he would have trouble getting through the speech. When you get a manuscript to read, you need to practice reading it out loud a lot. Just because it's a manuscript and you don't have to memorize the words, or you're going to have all the words you want to say in front of you, doesn't mean it's any easier. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's harder because you've got to be able to not only read the text from the page, but also continue to have a conversation and be in a dialogue with your audience. Yeah, when I had a rule. When I was at an overseas site working for the Department of Defense, we had congressmen, we had cabinet secretaries, we had foreign dignitaries come through, we had senior officials with the local government coming through, and I would, as the site briefer, I got to brief all of them, and a lot of times on scientific and technical topics, I was not necessarily the biggest expert on. I would have people in the room that can answer any questions that come up, but I was not necessarily the smartest guy in the room on the topic, which really made me uncomfortable. But I had a rule that if you're going to give me a script to read, there is a cutoff time after which there will be no changes. And usually what I would do the day before I would give the briefing, I would sit down with whoever had written the briefing and I would read through it out loud with them so that I could ask questions. And I would make notes and they would send me a file and I would, add my notes to it. And then at the end of that meeting, I would tell them, listen, are there any changes you want to make? Because I'm not going to take any changes after we leave this meeting. And they would go, we'll go back and we'll look and we'll see. No, I have to prepare so that when I give this speech, I am standing out there representing thousands of people that work at this site. And I am not going to get up there and stumble over words. And I am not going to get up there and have you change things around at the last minute. Any changes you make, and I'd warn them about this, any changes you're going to want to make, you have to make them now, because once you leave this room, this briefing is mine, and I am not accepting any changes for it. Okay? And that was at least 24 hours in advance. Then I would go into the room where I was going to give the briefing if I could, and I would read the briefing over and over again just to make sure that I knew all the words, and I could look up around the room and maintain eye contact. Now, a lot of people say, well, if everybody knows you're reading a script, what's important? Because if the congressman or if the senator from Virginia raises his hand to ask a question and you don't see that in like 3 seconds, he's going to get pissed because senators think they're important. Okay? So I warn people all the time about manuscripts that, yeah, it seems like the easiest way to do it, but it takes a lot of practice. But if you're talking about something you're not necessarily familiar with, you need precise wording, or you have strict time limits, manuscript reading is the way to go. But you still have to practice just as much as any other kind of speech. Okay? Our third method of presentation, it's very similar. It's easy to misspell. Memorization. Memorization. And when you memorize a speech, it's very similar to having the exact script like a manuscript. Okay? You memorize the speech. There's some advantages. No notes means you can focus on the audience. It works on strict time limits, just like a manuscript. Okay? It allows you to attempt to have precise language, just like a manuscript. So memorization is much like using a manuscript, except you don't have the manuscript. You've got that script, you just haven't memorized. Here's the problem. Human beings don't remember 4 to 6 minute speeches. Human beings will memorize 12 30-second briefings or speeches. Okay? We have markers within that 6 minutes, and we will remember chunks, and we will start at that marker and go to the next marker. And if we get derailed in the middle of it, we can't stop where we left off probably. We have to go back to that previous marker and start over again. Okay? So there are problems with memories. And you've seen it. So when looking at the difference between the median and the average, one must, well, bam, backfire outside. You've become derailed. Can you start off with where you were? Probably not. Probably, and you've seen people do this, you'll see them, go, when figuring the difference between the mean and the average, okay, you have to go back and pick it back up. Okay? Here's the other problem with memorization. It's also a problem with manuscript reading. Is when you're giving your speech and you see somebody over in that back corner going like, what the hell are they talking about? What? What can you do to adjust for that individual in the back? You can go back and repeat the last part. You can go back a couple of those signposts and pick the speech up back in the past, but you can't really reset and adjust. All you can do is to continue to regurgitate what you've already memorized. Okay? And then there's the possibility of seeing that person in the back going like, wait, what? You're going to get derailed and then you're going to be screwed up. And heaven forbid, if you're giving a memorized speech, somebody raises their hand to ask a question. Because then you have to stop and start all over again. And in a memorized speech, that is a nightmare. Okay? And if you're going to try to memorize a speech of 4 to 6 minutes, like in this class, that takes a lot of time. Unless you have an eidetic memory, unless you're Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. Okay? Our last way is what we're going to do in here. Extemporaneous. You're going to be speaking extemporaneously. You have notes, but not a script. You're not impromptu, but your topic, organization, and evidence are all developed well in advance. But you leave the exact words to the speech itself. Okay? Extemporaneous speaking allows for flexibility. It allows for audience engagement. Engagement, I'm not going to go back and fix it. Okay? The prime advantage is it allows you to adjust during the speech. Its prime disadvantage is it has less precise wording. Less precise language. Okay? So if you look back there, if you just have notes that are key memory points for you on your note cards, and you're looking back there and you go, you see the person in the back going like, what the hell? You can go, okay, I see people didn't grab that. Let's drop back and try it again. Okay? Now, people think, and it's very obvious in SPC-205, a lot of people think that because you're not writing a script, you don't have to spend as much time on it. Okay? Which is absolutely not true. An extemporaneous speech in many ways takes a lot more practice than a manuscript reading, or well, maybe not to memorize, but than a manuscript reading. The reason for that is you need to be very, very familiar with what you're going to be talking about. Okay? Because you're not going to have it written down word for word. Now, before we get to our informative speech, I'm going to show you a set of note cards. Your note cards, and this is how we're walking through this. Remember, we go all the way back from topic selection to organize, developing your outline, organizing your speech. Now we're going to be making our note cards. Remember, if during outlining you wrote out word for word a 4 to 6 minute speech, you're never going to be able to get that on 2 note cards. And don't think you can use 3 to 5. I count it when you flip your note cards. Okay? So you're going to have to extemporate. If you're going to expect to make 4 minutes in the speeches that we're done, you're going to have to speak extemporaneously. You cannot write, okay, enough for a 4 to 6 minute speech on 2 note cards without writing it in microfilm print and standing here like this reading through it the entire time. Okay? So again, each are okay and used in the appropriate time. Impromptu will be no notice, but you still need to organize. Manuscript reading is for precise language and strict time limits, but you still need to engage with the audience. Memorization allows you, without notes, to really make eye contact with the audience and engage with them. But remember, memorization is hard. Impromptu speaking gives you the best of all of those. It does allow you to adjust your speech during the speech itself based on audience feedback. But it allows for less precise language, and it does take a lot of practice, and you really have to know your topic. Okay? All right, that's almost two lectures in one in 38 minutes. Wow, that's 19 minutes each. I'm doing great, and I'm out of coffee, so this lecture is clearly over. And of course, the last swallow of coffee I choke on. Okay, that's it for the day. Again, if you have any questions, contact me via email. If you need to talk face-to-face, we can set up a Zoom meeting, or we can set up an appointment here on campus and we can come talk face-to-face. If you, I can answer your question through email, and it's not that I'm trying to, do the Heisman and push you off, but I can get you a quicker response via email than the other ways. But if you really want, I am absolutely open to meeting with you with all appropriate safety precautions in place. So listen, stay in touch. Let me know if you have any questions. Stay safe, and we will see you soon.